Okay, I'm Mike Klonsky. Among other things, I'm the director of the Small Schools Workshop. I'm also part-time faculty now at DePaul University and at UIC, where I taught for many, many years. We started the Small Schools Workshop back in 1991 at UIC. We were doing a lot of the early research at that time on issues of school size and student achievement, what they call student achievement, school size and school violence, school size and use of drugs, alcohol, and tobacco on the part of adolescent kids and things like that. And so we started the workshop basically to help support the work of teachers who were trying to create what they called at that time smaller learning communities, more intimate places where teachers knew their kids better, where they could do more authentic kinds of teaching and assessment. In other words, not just the kind of testing madness that we see now, but real assessment of how kids were doing, and then able to connect the curriculum to the lives and experiences of kids. This has become quite a big movement, and also a big struggle to keep it from being taken over by what we call the ownership society forces. In other words, people who want to privatize schools, erode public space, define small schools simply as privately managed charters and things like that. So it's one of the reasons I came to the U.S. Social Forum, to connect with fellow educators, school activists, parents, and community people who were interested in kind of re-examining the purpose of schooling, redesigning their public schools, and rethinking new ways to educate, especially kids from low-income families, and rethink urban schooling in particular. Around here, I'm considered a senior citizen, and deservedly so. This is really a youth movement that's building. Education is naturally a central part of the youth movement. It was even when I was a young activist in the 60s. I came here and saw that there was at least 50 workshops on education reform, education change, rethinking education. And you mentioned some of the leading lights in this: Grace Boggs, Bill Ayers, really veterans of this struggle, and finding a voice that resonates among young activists now. And this of course, is inspiring for me. You know, it gives me some hope in the future of the movement, a movement that we tried to begin really back in the 60s. Given the fact that throughout the country, teachers have had a very difficult time finding their voices, organizing for power to push back against these things. The victory in Chicago of the core caucus within the Chicago Teachers Union was an amazing, awesome victory. I think it caught the bureaucracy by surprise in many ways. The business people, I think, were stunned. But I think the reason for the victory was that they tapped into this building anger and resentment among teachers. Teachers trying to, who were facing impossible conditions in their classroom. Now they're talking about increasing class sizes to 35 or 37 kids. They've been closing schools, firing teachers en masse. Now they're talking about nationally firing 300,000 teachers. And the traditional union leadership around the country seems to be paralyzed, or seems to have settled just for a seat at the table, along with the Obama administration. And I think that's true with a lot of us. You know, a lot of us who supported Obama and were hoping for a more progressive administration after the 8 years of the Bush administration. I think in many ways we've all kind of turned into spectators, hoping and wishing for better, more humane policies to come down out of Washington, and they haven't come down. In fact, if anything, this race to the top that we're seeing coming out of the Department of Education, and the continuation of the Renaissance 2010 policies in Chicago are even worse now than they were before. And I think the days of waiting and hoping that this administration does right by us are over. And I think the election of the Progressive Caucus within the teachers union in Chicago is the beginning signs of growing resistance on the part of teachers and school activists. Teachers union is one of the only voices and ways for teachers to exert power in this society. Same with any workers. I mean, and right now, as you point out, there's an assault going on against not only teachers unions but against unions in general. This recession and the budget cuts have been devastating. This combined with this assault from the more conservative political forces on public education is what's created this. The two of them together is what's created this tsunami on public education, but also the lack of resistance on the part of educators, and has allowed that to happen in some parts. So we also have to take some of the responsibility on ourselves for remaining passive in the face of this. Today I read in this morning's Detroit papers that the mayor is closing not only dozens of schools here, but now 77 public parks are being closed. In other words, what we're seeing is the general erosion of public space, and it's being done away with. Public space, public decision making are being eroded, turned over to privatized, and with that comes the lack of public decision making. So I think this is probably the greatest threat to democracy in this country in my lifetime. I haven't, since the end of racial segregation in Mississippi and Alabama and places like that, I haven't seen anything that compares to this assault on the public. Our fight is to try to not only retain and restore the public part of public education, but to change it as well, to revolutionize it, to rethink it. We're not just trying to defend the traditional models, but to rethink what is the purpose of schooling. Is it schooling and education the same thing? And how do we engage students that are not being engaged now, when we're losing a majority of them to the streets and to the institutions? We're institutionalizing. We have the biggest jail population in the world right now, and the one thing that, if you go to those prisons, which I've done, and you talk to the inmates, the one thing you find in common is basic illiteracy. That's the uniting factor. And so we see that public schools have got to play a major role in the change process in this country. And when we lose public schools, we lose a lot more than schools. We lose the very heart of the democratic system.